An invasive species is a plant, fungus, or animal species that is not native to a specific location, i.e., an introduced species, and which has a tendency to spread to a degree believed to cause damage to the environment, human economy, or human health. Biodiversity means the variability among living organisms from all sources, including terrestrial, marine, and other aquatic ecosystems, and the ecological complexes of which they are a part. This includes diversity within species, between species, and of ecosystems. When it comes to invasive species, some are much more harmful to the surrounding biome than others. In general, most invasive species result in negative effects throughout the biome they are introduced to. However, there are some exceptions. This mostly comes in the form of plants utilized for agriculture, since we have fertilizers, farming practices, and many other factors that help to negate many of the negative consequences of these invasive plants. Although there are other plants, such as the purple loosestrife, which is currently damaging wetland ecosystems in Canada by leaching out all of the nutrients in the soil that native plants need. There are also animals used and bred as livestock that are technically invasive species. However, these animals are usually easier to control as they are bred in farms and managed by ranchers, so they do not ruin the land, and are used as food sources, meaning they have an abundance of competition. This makes their general impact, aside from the pollution, less troubling than other invasive species. Albeit, this is not the same case for most other invasive species, especially when it comes to animals. This is because animals cause more competition, have lower amounts of food/resources, and a new species of animal could quickly reduce other species' numbers or even eliminate them, as they may not have any competition in the area other than humans. Another major concern is that plant species are often affected extremely negatively, since invasive plants can take all of the nutrients from the soil and other invasive animals could rampantly consume native plants in the area. One of the most common invasive species we would see in Canada is the eastern gray squirrel. This invasive species is so commonplace in Canada nowadays to the point that many do not even know it is invasive. However, they are. They displace native birds/tree-dwelling creatures, compete for resources with native species such as mice and red squirrels. They breed twice a year and have litters between 2 to 8 young, which causes a rampant growth in population. Finally, they also threaten the gray oak species as they peel the bark, causing the tree to die. In general, invasive species are an issue because they reduce or at times ruin biodiversity in the area they inhabit. This is because many invasive species will enter an area where they are not considered to be prey by the pre-existing native species. This results in the invasive species consuming resources, hunting native species at times, and breeding rampantly without other species in the area to reduce their numbers. This causes the native species to migrate or die as they have little resources or habitat due to the invasive species, which may not have a current limiting factor as they are not prey to the native species. These are just a few of the invasive species that are currently damaging our ecosystems. Reducing the number of invasive species is hard, as many of them enter different ecosystems via means we cannot completely control, such as by bird, which can transport these invasive species, as well as accidentally being carried over on boats or in shipped goods. However, there is also the issue of people buying and releasing exotic pets, as evident in Florida, USA, where species of python, boa, and anaconda are rampantly damaging native species habitat and population. This has resulted in massive fines, bans, and initiatives to remove the animals, much like with other invasive species. This is also one of the reasons the government and border security disallow some plants or animals from being transported, both by companies in trade or by tourists/travelers. Whereas we cannot prevent birds from accidentally carrying an invasive species, we can utilize initiatives such as allowing people to hunt them all year or paying people for killing the animal to reduce the populations of these invasive species. In Louisiana, USA, there is a program in place where you can turn in neutral rat tails in exchange for payment, as they are trying to reduce this invasive species. Finally, another great way to reduce invasive species is to make sure that the plants or animals you purchase are not classified as invasive, and that if you are in possession of such material, you either remove it or take steps to ensure that you do not accidentally release said animals into the ecosystem. For instance, in Lake Tahoe, there is an invasive species of mega goldfish which can reach up to 1.5 feet, that was most likely exposed to the environment due to aquarium owners. One of the most notable and prominent positions to pursue if you wish to work in relations to invasive species is an ecologist. Ecologists study the relationship between species and their environments. This includes the impact of and relationship between invasive species and the native species/biomes. Ecologists work to study living organisms and the way they work within their environment to increase our knowledge and understanding surrounding the natural world. This allows for better environmental planning in government and industry to help not only the environment, but also for humanity's constant push for economic and technological progression. They do this by using their expertise to solve environmental issues via methods such as investigating the possible factors from which an environmental issue may have arisen, investigating and questioning the possible effects of any actions they may propose, and designing sustainable practices. They also may do field work to gather and analyze data on environmental conditions or to assess or certify habitat's viability. Using this information, they work to plan habitat management or environmental restoration projects, such as delegating schedules, resources, budgets, and procedures. Once they find a solution, they communicate the possible options to clients and policymakers, often with maps that consist of geographic information systems or diagrams created with computer-aided design programs. Many ecologists are employed by the government, both at state and federal level, for various projects. Ecologists assist both the government and industries they are working for to write impact statements or manage the resources of various projects. Ecologists employed by environmental consulting companies may assess the environmental impacts of clients' projects and design sustainable practices to minimize negative effects. Other jobs ecologists may be hired for include monitoring and restoring disturbed populations and ecosystems, applying for environmental remediation permits for clients, and doing research in labs and on the field to answer questions about how the species and their environment interact. They are also employed by colleges and universities as professors and staff members, as well as being employed in parks and recreation services as naturalists and educators. The average salary for ecologists in America was recorded to be around $67,000 in 2014. However, wages can differ from place to place, with the low salary being $30,000 to the high salary being $130,000. With the public's focus on environmental sustainability increasing over the past decade, so has the demand for people in the environmental sector, such as ecologists. Being as there are various different branches of ecologists as well as various areas ecologists can work in, the demand for people with this profession is growing. Depending on the field you work in as an ecologist, your education requirements to practice in your field will vary from others. For example, those with associate's degrees are allowed to practice as lab, field, or research technicians, and those with a bachelor's degree may find work as program scientists in government as well as positions as environmental educators. However, if you wish to be an environmental consultant, environmental planner, or program manager in private industry, you will most likely need a master's degree, whereas a doctorate is required for those who pursue faculty and research positions in academia, or for any type of research position in the private sector, government, or in nonprofit organizations. Some of the subjects you may be required to study to begin working in the field include zoology, microbiology, botany, chemistry, and earth science, as well as mathematics and computer sciences. It is also helpful to have communication and writing skills/experience, as you will most likely be required to work with others. Finally, practical experience is extremely important. Therefore, volunteering to assist in programs related to your field or taking up an internship in your field are vital practices. A list of a few ecology-related degrees include Geospatial Science degree offered online and campus, Biomimicry degree offered online and in campus, Anthropology bachelor's degree offered online programs, Environmental Toxicology degree, and Environmental Psychology degree. Depending on the field you work in, you may be exposed to various stresses. This could be weather due to field work, moving equipment which could stretch your muscles while doing field work, long work hours, writing many papers, having tight deadlines, and delivering presentations and public speaking. Hazards you may be exposed to are animals on the field, weather, chemicals in the labs, and strain from muscles from field work. You could also be exposed to diseases if you are working with dead animals and researching them.